Okay, I'm back. I've been having some technical difficulty, but we're going to try to get through this. So we're on to the color television. There was an initial introduction of a color television in 1951, but production was stopped because the federal government ruled the color set used strategic material necessary for the Korean War effort. So you see how wars and well, like right now, the coronavirus pandemic. We have no idea what technology was being created or finished or whatever during this period of time. And when we come out on the other side, and we will, and we'll get better, then we will see what was going on while this was happening. I often look at old movies of people from the terrible uh, 1930s, 1920s, late 1920s, and I see these poor people, and I think to myself, all they had to do each day was worry about where their food was coming from, where their water was coming from. And you think back to all those people, hundreds of thousands of people who lived day to day like that. And you wonder how many of these people, had they had enough money, not a lot of money, but enough money, could have gone to college, could have invented things. And I think of that as a brain drain. And so you can see when things like this happen, when wars happen, technology can sometimes get stuck in place, and we don't benefit from it until those distractions are over. But at any rate, we had to wait for the Korean War effort, and in 1954, the color television was introduced by RCA. Thank you, Mr. Sarnoff. Color TVs took more than a decade to reach a significant number of households, and color became the dominant television set in 1966. And I'll tell you, I remember it very well. They were very expensive. People didn't, very few people had them. We knew of one kid in our entire neighborhood, not on our block, through several blocks. Word got out that he had a color TV. There was one show that we all wanted to watch. We just wanted to watch the beginning of it, and it was called Bonanza. And in the beginning, you see the map of where the Ponderosa Ranch is, and you see the map, and then it starts on fire. And it was just fantastic. We couldn't believe that we were seeing color on television. And so anyway, 1966, it became dominant, and black and white TVs were being relegated to the kitchen. You know, everybody wanted some kind of, if the woman was cooking, she wanted something in the kitchen. We still do. Then we get into the videotape revolution. Prior to the mid 1950s, television was transmitted live or recorded on film on a kinescope recorder. Like I said, we've got all kinds of names for these things, and slide 9 is very good about showing what this looked like. It was a specially adapted 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter motion picture camera, filmed the program from a high quality monitor as it went to air. The result was poor by today's standards. In 1956, Ampex introduced its VR1000 quad videotape recorder. Kind of interesting, 1956, the first VCR, but we never got it. This physical technology led to a change in organizational technology by allowing high-quality television production to happen away from the New York studios. Wow, this really opened things up for television shows. Everything before that had to be in New York, had to be in a studio. They had to create a set. Sometimes a set was used for more than one show, and you could sort of say, gosh, you know, Archie Bunker, didn't they live in a house that kind of looked like this? So yeah, they used them over and over again to save money. But now they could go to California and start videotaping things and doing that there. And they could also now reporters could go on the spot and videotape things that were happening in the news. So it really changed the way we lived. Then we got high definition television. In 1970, Robert Maurer, Donald Keck, and Peter Schultz invented the fiber optic wire, which carries 65,000 times more information than a conventional or copper wire. And then 11 years later, in 81, HNK developed the first 1125 HD TV system. Now, sharpness is a function of lines across the screen to constitute the picture. So if you were able to go up and put an older TV, put a magnifying glass up to it, you're going to see lines running horizontally across your screen. The more lines, the better the picture. 60 years before Jenkins and Baird had been broadcasting at between 30 and 60 lines. So now we're talking about 525 lines in high definition. 40 years before, the standard was 525 lines. So now we have a resolution today in 4K television that is 4096 by 2160. This would be, if you were to get this kind of resolution on your television your computer screen, you're going to have really, really, really sharp pictures. You can sort of see this in the photography of the old newspapers. Their halftones that enabled them to print photographs. You take a magnifying glass to it, you could see the dots. But once they got many more dots in it, it became a higher resolution. We see that in photography. So over the past decade, closed caption television has introduced millions of hearing impaired viewers to the television. V-chips have enabled parents to control the content of what their children watch. And digital video recorders, DVRs, are changing the way people think about financing and viewing of television programs. So the better the technology, sometimes the more efficient it is, the more inexpensive it is for the people producing TV shows. Let's do a little bit more here before this thing cuts me off. So then we get into the inventors, the policymakers, and the sponsors of television. Television needed people with money to sponsor its programming. Basically, TV is an advertising mechanism. And then they throw programming in there just for fun, because nobody's going to sit there and watch 6 hours of advertising. You just aren't. You have to have a little, but the basic thing is it's for advertising. In other words, it's shaping your opinions of things. So then we get into the invention of the television, kind of, going back a little bit here. The television has become a staple of American culture. Virtually every household in the United States has a television set, and many have more than one. We've talked about that before. I think we have 7 in our house. It's ridiculous, but they're so cheap now. Color TV, you can get one for like $150. It is interesting that no one person can be credited with inventing the television. Over the course of a few years, many inventors added their contributions to make the television possible and improve performance, but I am going to tell you this. The one most credited as being the father of television is Philo Farnsworth. Don't forget his name. It sounds like it's a made-up name, but it isn't. He was a real person. So you have, in 1920, Charles Francis Jenkins, who introduced prismatic rings that would replace the shutter on a film projector. Then we have Dumont. In the 1920s, Dumont developed a cheaper version of the cathode ray tube, which we call a CRT, which would last for thousands of hours, much longer than the German version of the CRT, which would only last for 25 to 30 hours. Okay, we're going to stop right here after slide 14, and I'll pick up on slide 15.